Computing power of modern processors continues to rise blisteringly fast, but bias systems suggest that inefficient data movement is slowing them down. What's actually meant by that? And what's wrong with a good old data bus? They've designed what they refer to as unique fabric IP, and right now, I don't know what that is, so let's go find out. Nandan, thank you very much for joining me in the studio today.
Thanks, Elliot.
First question that I got is, I read on the website, the bias system suggests that the biggest challenge in modern computing is efficient data movement. What is it actually meant by that? And what is bottlenecking data transfer at the moment?
Whoa, hold there. Only 12% of you are subscribed. Do yourself a favor and subscribe for daily engineering content. All right.
That's a great question. Now, first things first, right? If you go back to the very basics of computer architecture, there's this venerable law called Amdahl's law. And Amdahl's law basically states that the processing capability or the performance of a system is always gated by the slowest bottleneck, right? So if you go back in the history, obviously you get data from memory, you process it, and you send it back. Originally, processors were much, much faster than memory, still are.
Yep.
So then what you did was you try to get memory on chip much faster. So you built storage on chip, like what are called caches. And then it became intricate into the levels of caches, because obviously anytime you put faster memory for storage, it is expensive. Whereas DRAMs, what you get off chip, are generally cheaper than what you can put on die, right? So you have to find that balance between faster processing capabilities, right, and cost. So Amdahl's law kind of defines kind of the basics of how processing works and what gates performance. What has happened since then is obviously as you do more and more processing, you can't do it in a single processor. You start doing parallel processors, and the scaling is dependent on how quickly those processors can communicate with each other and with memory, right? Just to put it into context, as processors also start becoming different, a CPU is different than a GPU. How they communicate with memory or with each other also changes. And so at every point, it's becoming more and more important that the processing improves, but it's going to be gated by how data moves between the processors, between multiple chips of these processors, and memory. So that's kind of the basics of what data movement is. And just to put it in context, especially with AI, which is so data intensive, data heavy, you can't do everything on one chip or even one rack or one system. It has to be lots of these systems put together to do the kind of processing that you need for AI training, AI inference. And so the bottlenecks are always in data movement, whether it is traditionally people have looked at it as, hey, I want to improve data movement between chip and memory, and then between racks, and then across. So there's been a lot of focus on optical networks, on faster networking for things like scale up, as you see.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. NVIDIA's acquisition of Mellanox, which led to the NVLink, is really powering scale up, right? So they spend a lot more time on the communication between the GPUs and GPU systems to make that possible. So that's kind of the context of data movement. Now, what's happening is as foundry processes get better and you can pack more and more on chip, which is always the fastest way to do things, how data moves within the die itself, within the chip, is becoming that much more important, and the efficiency is getting critical, right? So that's actually the problem that BIA tries to solve. On die and across die, how do we make the best systems possible?
Very interesting. It's funny you mentioned Amdahl's law. I haven't heard of that since university, maybe. But essentially what I'm hearing is that overall performance of our computers and networks isn't being bottlenecked by the processors performing itself. It's getting data from one place to another. So I'm assuming today we're not talking about your failed attempt to fix this. So what is your solution to that problem?
So you're right. Data movement is a problem that has to be solved at multiple levels. So we talked about NVIDIA and NVLink. They're looking at it as communication between racks or even systems in the
Mhm.
data center. There are companies like Fabrica that are supporting that and helping connections to memory and to between rack systems. We are looking at solving the data movement problem on a single die, right? What's called a
Right.
system on a
Yeah.
chip, or as we start getting bigger into system of chiplets, because now you're getting best-in-class solutions that are created in different chiplets put together in the same package for the full system of chiplets. So our focus is on three main things. How do we make the performance of these new systems much better and more efficient? Second thing is how do you design them in a way that you know ahead of time that they're going to deliver what they're supposed to, right? And also be future proofed so they can stay current as new workloads come along, new systems come along. And three is how do you make all of this easy to design and implement and deploy in its fastest way possible? So traditionally, systems, yes, for high performance systems, people think about them first, but still the system, what is called fabric, I'm sure we'll talk about fabric and buses on the on chip. How do you make that system work uh, quickly? Because it's usually an afterthought. There's a lot of spaghetti wires going around. As you start seeing that this is becoming 20, 25, 30% of the system on chip, you need to start paying a lot more attention and making it easier to achieve all of that because, again, you don't want it to be the bottleneck.
It's funny you mentioned that. I probably did want to discuss the difference between these. So my next question for you would be sort of the way that I think of things is very much in like an electronics engineering state of mind. When I have to get data from one place to
Hmm.
another, I think about a bus, whether it be I2C, SPI, UART, whatever our common versions are. And then now we're talking about a fabric and a unified fabric. So what is the difference between a bus and a fabric?
Yeah, fair question. So bus usually is seen as a communication point to point that has transport and a protocol that manages it. So if you look at UART, it's like a connecting a specific type of peripheral to the system, right? So that's a generic term, and bus the term bus gets used across the board, right? Um, so if you've heard of ARM's AMBA, people will call it an interconnect standard. People will say AMBA buses. So it's a generic term. Fabric
Mm-hmm.
is also a generic term. If you think about connecting up all the ingredients uh, on the die components, that's what fabric looks like. It's a mesh effectively, or a of wires that goes across. If you look at it very simply, fabric again is a generic term for what is called network on chip. So instead of thinking of just a point-to-point activity, now you don't have the luxury of just doing point-to-point across everything, especially because each component may be connected to lots of other components, right? How do you move those
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
wires around chip? So network on chip is a mechanism whereby you have common sets of transport and wires and logic that goes along and a protocol that sits on top that allows different components on the chip to talk to many others in the most efficient way, right? So fabric is a generic term again for what's called either network on chip um, or a system of buses, if you like.
So let's talk about your new switch fabric. So you've just released it in March and it's called Neuroscale. And
Hmm.
what is that changing? I've heard sort of the term mesh to replace a crossbar. What is meant by that? And what is new with Neuroscale?
Great. So let's actually talk about what's causing the drive, right? So if you can see why NVIDIA, for example, have led the march. Firstly, they did a masterful job of actually having a software platform called CUDA and using their GPU capabilities, augmenting it with other AI acceleration to create AI platforms. But what NVIDIA also saw a long way ahead of this was the need for data movement and um, the move to scale up switching, which is now how do you actually create these large systems that are taking on larger and larger models to process, um, and then of course scale out, which means I can do lots and lots of other inferences in parallel or training in parallel. So what has changed over the last few years is just the capacity growth needed of very tightly coupled processing systems has gone nuts, right? So you've seen even NVLink going from 8-node systems to 16-node systems to now 72-node systems.
Mm.
What the AI market seems to be demanding is actually 288 nodes and even greater densities. Now, what is done to support that is traditionally you have switches which have crossbars. Now, crossbars are effectively think about them as systems where any port can connect to any other output port, input to output port, almost in a dedicated fashion, right?
Okay.
Of course, that means how you design those systems makes it much more complex as you start increasing the number of nodes, increasing the frequency at which it operates. So it needs a lot more almost hands-on custom work to actually start achieving these larger node densities. Meshes, on the other hand, are traditionally more packet-based that connect in a grid, but there are variable latencies. They move from A to B, but it's not always guaranteed as the same path. So there are hence as you forward the packets from one to the other nodes as we go along, there are routers that go along. That becomes for crossbars, you need almost guaranteed non-blocking behavior from one to the other when needed. Meshes tend to say, we'll get you there, but it may not be exactly at the time you expect, right? So what Neuroscale does is to make a mesh-like system, which is somewhat easier to build and implement, work like a crossbar. Okay.
Okay.
And what we're seeing is that is extremely attractive to the players in the market who even built crossbars before, but the scale at which they need to build it, the kind of effort that's needed, you probably need teams of hundreds of people to build a very good custom network switch. You can do a lot more. The core part of it now can be replaced by Neuroscale, which is much easier to implement, right? And still do standard synthesis flows. The way we do Neuroscale, it's also very easy to tile it, so you can actually implement a specific component of it and then just instantiate a lot of them. That simplifies your implementation process, the implementation time, and the risk to do that. So what we see Neuroscale doing is really enabling smaller, more agile companies or mid-range agile companies that want to attack the scale up and scale out market to build switching capabilities a lot faster.
And so this can't be for nothing. I guess what performance increase are you seeing that Neuroscale is bringing compared to a traditional interconnect?
So that's a great question. So if you look at Broadcom's Tomahawk 5 switch, right? So it is targeting 50 terabits per second as capability.
Phew.
That's obviously a pretty market-leading product when it came out. It's a large SoC die. Broadcom obviously has a long history and all of that. Now, we are not focusing on the SerDes or serial deslicers, analog components around it. We're talking only about the core digital part that we do in terms of switching. The demand is growing rapidly. So 50 terabits per second is no longer as interesting to the market, or you're going to 100 terabits, you're going to 256 terabits in the not too distant future. So what Neuroscale does is two things. One, makes the implementation of a single die system easier. But because of the way it's designed, it's kind of efficient, even though a large part of these switch chiplets is taken by these SerDes and analog components altogether. If you build a very custom crossbar, it's not easy to make sure that all the what is called shorelines, all the edges of the die that can be used become available purely for input output, right? So
Yeah.
what Neuroscale enables customers to do also is to now actually build chiplets and then pack them to grow the capacity. So instead of a single chiplet or chip that can do 256 TB, which is very tough, can you actually now do it efficiently with 4 chiplets, each of which may be um, a subset in terms of size, and then create large density. So we're trying to enable a chiplet-friendly um, approach to scaling of switching for scale up and scale out.
Very cool. Nandan, thank you very much for joining me today.
Um, Thank you. It was a pleasure conversing, and thanks for having us there.
Anytime. Hey, everyone who's watching this today, we're going to have a full write-up on this up on the ipXchange website. If you like these conversations that I have with people who are bleeding edge leaders of their fields, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Until next time, stay disruptive.